on this Witchy Wednesday. And today we're going to talk anything and everything about the winter solstice, yay, which is a time of celebration and joy. Okay, so the winter solstice is also referred to as midwinter. And solstice, the word itself means the sun stands still. Okay? And with the solstice, this happens between December 21st to the 22nd. When the solstice comes, the days start to lengthen each day after the solstice. So you have Samhain, where after Samhain, the days get a little bit darker each day, the sun fades. And then once it gets to Yule, the sun starts to come out each day more, and then the temperature slowly starts to rise. So in historical times, it was a sign of hope for people because with warmer weather came the hope of winter being over, that spring and summer were on its way. So it was a time of renewal. So Yule in itself is when the mother goddess gives birth to the sun. And when she gives birth to the sun, that means that the sun is now coming back. So it's a sign of hope for people, because during Samhain, they've collected everything that they've harvested, and they stored up for the winter, and they were just trying to ride out the storm. They tried to save enough firewood. They slaughtered the animals to prepare for this winter solitude that they had to go through. And something I found interesting is that they actually would go to bed early, like early, so as soon as, I guess, darkness came, they would go to bed early, and they would rise late to conserve their heat, their heating source, like their wood. And they would only go out during the daylight hours, and they actually spent majority of the time just kind of hibernating. They didn't do a whole lot of work. It's only modern times where we try to have the same productivity level as the summer seasons. But that's, you feeling sluggish during winter, you feeling sleepy, you feeling like unmotivated, that's normal. Like what we're doing now is what's abnormal. It's not the darker times of the year is when our soul needs introspection, it needs rest, it needs all these things, and we deny it now. So that's why you have things like seasonal depression and things like that. You're not meant to do a whole lot during the winter months. You're not supposed to be working crazy or anything like that. You're really just supposed to be hibernating and trying to keep warm. Like, that's it. So that was something that I found kind of interesting. And so the winter solstice, again, is the longest night of the year. And like I said, this is the rebirth of the sun. So in the Norse mythology, they called the winter solstice Mother's Night. And this is where Frigg or Frigga labored to birth the sun into the world. Mother's Night originated from a pagan midwinter celebration. The name changed later to Christmas Eve from the Saxons after they kind of borrowed the tradition a little bit. And so we have male and female deities. Like I said, this is a time mostly for the mother, the dark mother, okay, in her time of the year. She's went through the fertility of spring. She's carried the baby. She's done, she just wants rest now. So it's a big time to connect to the feminine energies. If you're trying to do any kind of magic or anything, it would be a good time to honor her. But some that we have the Norwegian goddess Frigg, and she is the goddess of winter. Now keep in mind, all of these goddesses are symbols of birth, death, and the fierceness of winter, like the cold harshness, but also the nurturing and the warmth, things of that. You have Hulda, which means the kindly one, and she's a Germanic goddess of Christmas, with areas of prosperity and fertility. You have the Celtic goddess Kalek, or the divine hag crone. She's the one who rules all the way until Imbolc, and they kind of use her like the I'm trying to think, Groundhog. Yeah, they kind of used her as like a groundhog back then. Like if you see, I don't remember the lore behind it, but if you see this, it means Collect's going to extend the winter, or if you see this, it means that she's going to shorten and it's almost over. I forget. But we have the groundhog, which is the same thing, so it's something interesting. You also have Skadi. She's the Scandinavian goddess of winter. And so the male deities, they represent the sun and its rebirth, and they're typically solar. So you have Apollo, who was the Romans' favored god during the Augustus time. You have the Irish god Lu, who's a solar god for prosperity, abundance, fertility. He was also a warrior and very good at, he was a magician, so he was really, really good at pretty much everything. And then the Persians changed Apollo to Mithras. So there's your gods and goddesses. So this time period, we had the Norse who created Yule, which was 12 days until, the 22nd. And then you had the Romans who had Saturnalia, which occurred from December 17th to the 23rd. And they exchanged presents, and something else that's interesting is the masters and slaves switched places. So the masters would have to wait on their slaves. And in England and through Northern Europe, after Christianity took over, the heathens were still celebrating their days, still celebrating their holidays. Well, they used to call their parties Feast of Fools, and they would dress up as clowns and stuff, so they could kind of make fun of the church, but also have their celebrations still. Or they called it the misrules, which I also thought was kind of interesting. So the colors that represent Yule are red, green, and gold. Green represents evergreens, the red represents the berries, and the gold represents the sun. So if you see rituals for Yule, that's what that means. Evergreens were hung up everywhere as they were symbols of life, strength, and protection. Evergreens is exactly that. They think they had everlasting life, so hanging up all around the house is like they were trying to absorb the everlasting life of the evergreens by keeping it around everything. Also, times for doing magic during Yule, if you want to utilize the winter solstice energies. Well, the morning hours are kind of like waxing hours. It'd be a good time to do the Yule ritual. It'd be a good time to have magic that's aimed at growth or expansion, which, if you follow my astrological energy forecast, now's kind of the time for that anyway, just on an energy level would be the time for trying to expand. Midday, it's about balance, so any of your spell work should kind of focus on renewal. Sunset, or the twilight hours, which is after sunsets, is a very, very short time period, so if you do want to utilize this, you have to be quick about it. It's a liminal time, and which means it's an equal balance, and it will be the liminal time between day and night. So right when the sun is kind of at the, it's finally went down all the way, and you have that little bit of light there and the darkness, that would be the time. And you would do magic aimed at like charms. They spoke about poppets and stuff, which is also found in the Slavic tradition. I don't personally partake in that kind of magic because it's kind of more ancestral and spirit related versus gods, which I'm just not comfortable with the spirit part. But apparently they used to make things like that. So like the gingerbread men, they would actually have, they make poppets that were gingerbread people, and they would fill it with, if it was just for a person and they wanted protection, they would put holly and mistletoe inside of it, or like stones or anything, and seal it shut. And they would have the wear it on them, which I thought was kind of crazy. But yeah, this time would be a good time for working with deities or spirits. It's also kind of like crossroad magic. It's an in-between place, so you don't really know what's there. And especially since it's the longest night, that's why we have traditions like the Yule log. The Yule log was, they went out and got a log, they put it into their fireplace, they even carved little things on it or whatnot. But the whole purpose was to keep it lit all night, so that way that they didn't have any kind of malevolent spirits or anything like that came down. It was a form of protection for the home. So, that time of year is the time when any kind of spirits are there. So I think if you're trying to use some liminal magic, you need to be really, really cautious. It's not the time to mess around, because I think you most definitely will find out, and it's not going to be the kind of find out you want to have. Just saying. You have the eve, which is the night before. So I would say the December 20th, which is apparently really good magic. It creates a tension between past, present, and future. It's also a transition and a threshold, which is very big in magic. So if you're wanting to do your yearly tarot card spreads, or if you have some questions you need answered, that'd be a good time for divination, like a really good time. Some other things, so the animals that are auspicious during this time. So you have the deer. Boop. Let me see my shirt. Yeah. So you have the deer, which was a big food source for people back in the day. They because the majority of the animals hibernate. Well, the deer don't, so they're still out, so they would be still a source of food. But the stag was revered and is sacred during the stark seasons, as it's a symbol of the horned god who reigns during winter. So in my Witchy Wednesday, try to say that fast, Witchy Wednesday special of the Lord of the Forest, that's what I'm talking about. The Lord of the Forest reigns during this time. And supposedly, they think that the antlers of the stag carries the sun, because they say the antlers represented trees, and when you would see the sun go through it, you'd see the sun, but also because their antlers shed, they also regrow, so it was a symbol of rebirth, if you will. And another thing that was interesting is that kings back then, they would call them the stag king or the king stag, and that's because it's not just a Game of Thrones thing. They would actually adorn their kings, say like the Celts would, as well as pretty much the entire British Isles. They would adorn their kings with crowns made of antlers, because it meant they were chosen. So that's pretty interesting. They also have horses. Horses were used in rituals called hootening. Sounds like the Appalachian hootenanny. Which is where men go door to door dressed like a horse, collecting coins in their mouth in exchange for blessings and just some good old entertainment, I guess. You just have a bunch of men coming to your house that want you to put money in their mouth. It sounds a little suspicious to me. But this is apparently where the term from the horse's mouth comes from. This was also the Scottish tradition where a person goes from inside the house to the outside, because apparently whoever they invited in, the first guest they invited in of the new year, they would determine their luck for the year. So they'd have somebody go from inside the house to the outside, and they would extinguish all of their lights. And one person would stand outside with a candle and go, may I come in? I extend you this blessing. And they would invite the person in, and they'd have to go room to light the candle because of this tradition. But also that's, people would go to each other's houses, and if they didn't have the candle, they would, they were supposed to bring whiskey or scotch, So I thought that was pretty cool. But you have mistletoe. So I think I have mistletoe on here. But mistletoe, holly, and pine cones are actually really good protective herbs and trees. Um, Mistletoe and holly, they are one of the few plants that actually flowers during winter. So kissing under the mistletoe comes from the story from Norse mythology where Baldur is killed by a mistletoe branch that's carved into an arrow, and it pierces him. You know, mistletoe is poisonous, so don't eat it. Um, it pierced him, and his mother got sad and decided that it wasn't going to be used for that anymore, and that anyone who stood underneath the mistletoe, she would kiss them. So that's where that comes from. But also, mistletoe is a good fertility thing because, as I said, it flowers during wintertime, so it's a sign of fertility. You also have tree decorating. I know that one's a big thing. So some cultures, they would either adorn the trees with wishes or what they wish to manifest for the upcoming year. It was like their way of appeasing the gods. It was sacrifices to the gods to get them their wish. So they would decorate it in coins or, just like symbols of what they wanted. If they wanted money, it was coins. If they wanted health, probably an evergreen, for everlasting life, things like that. So they would adorn it with things to grant wishes to have their wishes granted from the gods. But then also they would just sacrifice to the gods. So they would put food and stuff all over the tree. So like the whole cranberries and popcorn. Yeah, that was actually just a sacrifice to the gods. But then some cultures actually believed that they felt kind of upset for the tree spirits being outside, so they wanted to bring them inside. I don't understand where the bringing them inside came from in that aspect, because you would just be killing the tree spirit by cutting it down. But apparently the cutting down the tree and bringing it inside didn't happen until way later in history from like a monarch, and then everybody decided to do it. So they didn't actually bring them outside, they left them outside. So it was like kind of a way to appease the gods. But yeah, that's also like a pagan tradition. But yeah, guys, this is Valeno, the Spark to the Self, going over all things Yule. I'm excited, and I hope you guys are excited. Bye, guys.